I believe lived experience voice has influenced policy change by allowing those who are making policy to understand and see the experience of those who are impacted by that policy.
When people are actively involved with advisory boards or councils, it means we're not tokenizing, we're not patronizing people by telling them we want them involved, but we're really providing them a seat at the table.
I've always wanted to give back because of my lived experience. My heart's in it. I love doing it. I like being a part of the council and being able to give feedback.
I'm able to see things from both perspectives. I'm able to see things from my lived experience perspective as well as a professional perspective. Incorporating individuals with lived experience is very important. They see how the system is, they see how it works, and they can definitely provide insight.
The people who need the change should lead the change. And if you start with a conversation with the people who need the change, they'll help you figure out what the board will look like, because this is what they want. This is what they need.
Oftentimes, when you think of policy, people think that it's created in a vacuum with people who don't always understand the impact of what that policy does. So I think when we have people that have lived experience, not only advocate, but show up and are included in those spaces, in those decision-making processes, policy is influenced in a multitude of ways, meaning from how it is actually formulated, how it's actually implemented, and then also what feedback comes from it in order for it to either be sustained or to be changed. So I think lived experience has a tremendous impact on policy, especially if lived experience individuals are included throughout the process.
It's about challenging power dynamics that are created in our system and really creating an inclusive environment for folks to explore and develop skill sets, as well as potentially maybe even move towards employment if this is something they're interested in based on capacity and interests to do something within the system. This is new in a lot of different spaces. So often we want lived experience, but it's really only tokenized. It's not necessarily embedded. And so by having advisory councils and boards allows space to get that direct feedback from the individuals that have lived experience.
One of the main ways that I know my voice was heard is when they're in session and looking at different bills they might be trying to pass. We'll get emails on those bills and they'll ask us what our input is, what we might think. I think that a lot of the agencies, state agencies, they'll take a big step in the right direction by starting councils like this and getting feedback from individuals with lived experience.
Not everyone deserves to hear our story, nor does everyone deserve our time. I let my youth know that this is their life and they have complete control over how they share and what they share. Do not feel obligated to share anything that you're not comfortable with.
We're not asking for people to spill their heart out, and give us a sad story. But they want to be able to share something about this story on how we can improve so that the next young person doesn't have to go through that.
I think recruiting individuals with lived experience requires a lot about thinking outside the box of what may typically be comfortable for different staff and team members. And so for us, we have the thing that has been the most successful is we have a text messaging campaign that we do for a number of different services that we cover. We have marketing and different things that we put up on our social media accounts, and we send out information through a lot of our partners. And oftentimes those members who have frequented a lot of different components or different sectors of our agency, will encourage them to apply.
I think also when thinking about recruitment, we need to talk to a variety of populations and people. I think it's important to have a variety of experiences, even if some of those experiences are messy or they've been problematic with our services or programs. It's important to know what went wrong, what could be better, and how can we improve on these things. And so I think really making sure that we are reaching a large variety of people from a variety of backgrounds and experiences is really important when looking at recruitment strategies.
If I'm looking for youth, I want to go where youth hang out. I want to go where they're meeting already and they're gathering naturally. I don't necessarily start with, I'm going to put an ad in the paper and say, we're looking for lived experience. Typically, that does not work. You go where people are already.
Not necessarily putting up a posting at a DSS office, but maybe looking at the library or the grocery store or in community centers, kind of putting the word out through natural connection.
Also talk to the people who are already involved to see what type of relationships or networks they have. They already have some people that might be able to talk.
We need to make an exerted effort to compensate people for their time and their experience, because as staff members, we go to meetings and we're being paid to represent our organization or our agency. And so one way to entice people is by having some financial compensation, be able to offer folks monetary, but that it could also be like childcare, that could be skill development, that could be resources.
A lot of the barriers for that compensation has been, again, just policy in general, just what does that look like in a written format so that it is all above board and adheres to whatever regulations exist within the state. The other thing is when we're looking at the process for compensating anyone at a state agency, sometimes it could take longer than they're anticipating. And sometimes the initial paperwork in order to get what they may need sometimes can create additional barriers.
I think when we talk about compensation, it's important that we're able to compensate people in real time, not necessarily months after they've done their involvement. We're still working to understand how compensation works with procurement. We've had conversations with other organizations where they are utilizing a third party, meaning other professional vendors, or contracting with community organizations to work as a bank to contract that money out to folks with lived experience, trying to cut down on administrative barriers and hurdles. Within the government system, it's not a clear straight line in regards to procurement. You have so many moving people and parts that not everyone's on the same page in regards to what's the difference between reimbursement, what's the difference between compensation, what's the difference between like stipends. And so there's a lot of nuances.
Compensation in and of itself is not meeting a need. That's nice, and you should be paying me for my time. That's just nice to do. But what is the other gains that I will have? What is the other gains for either me personally or my community, for my family? What other things am I getting out of this to make it worth my while, worth my time?
We have to make sure that people's expectations are being met, looking at evaluations and reviews to make sure that, folks are feeling like this is a good use of their time and they want to be involved. And so really having follow through on the objectives that are set out within the group and making sure that we're not just wasting people's time is really important.
Have tried to maintain engagement with our members by making sure we have multiple ways in which to communicate with them. And, everybody's a little different. And when you think about it from a generational standpoint, because we want that lived experience reflected in our general population, we try our very best to make sure that we contact them via email, via phone, text messaging, make sure there's probing questions in every facet of our engagement with them, opportunities for continuous feedback, then making sure there's a return on investment for that feedback, making sure that they understand that, hey, this feedback that you're providing in whatever way that they provide it is something that we truly do value and incorporate in the work that we do. And I think for our members, if we're saying that your feedback is valuable, that your time is valuable, then I think they themselves will see themselves differently in the feedback that they provide. Then you will truly start to internalize and hopefully believe you are an expert as well.
It's interesting when looking at co-leadership within advisory councils. I think it's important to talk about roles and activities, outlining, their role, outlining what is expected, outlining what are the limitations. You have the outline and the structure that the agencies are trying to work within, but also you have the leadership of the group.
I think if you're going to start that journey, you need to really think about what internal support will you have within your agency organization. What is the ultimate outcome of the group that you're creating? And then also think about what value it will bring to that member, both short term and long term.
Be patient, strategic sharing, and use the resources that are already out there. There's a lot of partners. There's a lot of opportunities. We partner with Project Life, other local DSS offices to figure out how we can show up for the youth as well as maximize on opportunities.
Give yourself some grace. It can be a complicated process. Hopefully you're not doing this all on your own. Hopefully that you have leadership support as well as support from your colleagues, because again, this is a multifaceted situation that we're trying to incorporate. Encompassing and bringing in lived experience is very much a bottom-up versus a top-down approach. By creating space for lived experience and by providing compensation through equity and other structures of how we show up, we have the ability to kind of change that top-down approach where we're telling communities what's best for them, but really listening to what the communities have to say and respond to feedback about how things could be better for them and the system that they live within.
When they're at the table and they're able to share whatever piece of the story they feel comfortable with, that's the first thing. And then how does you make a direct connection from this is what I experienced to a recommendation about what could be improved or changed in policy. And the more and more we do this, the more and more we learn how to do it. And the more and more we have people who want to come and help with changing policy.